Hello, and thank you for joining me, Christina Griffiths, in the very first interview in the Power of Working Together Better series. Today we're speaking to Clare Huby, who was responsible for project management and business development on the hugely successful Puffins Galore project. The project's success was contingent upon the collaboration of individuals from various business functions in many different disciplines. These included 3 types of technical groups: puffin sculpture manufacturers, puffin sculpture installation specialists, and app developers to develop the wonderful Puffins Galore app for mobile phones. In part 1, we explore how having a shared purpose and having everyone aligned to that purpose by using excellent communication was key to their success.
To what extent would you say that getting your people to work together well was key to this project's success?
It was essential. Without complete buy-in from all the people involved and without excellent communication, that it just couldn't have happened. At any one time we had around 200 people kind of talking to each other around different aspects of the project. So that communication, and also being able to communicate with specific groups and specific teams within those 200 people. And so some people would cross over between, they would be more than one of those groups or teams at any one time. So making sure that everybody got the right information at the right time.
Right, yes, so communication was key. And I noticed you said there were 200 people there, but initially I sort of said there were 100 people. So where were the other 100 coming from?
Well, the other 100, I mean, they kind of dipped in and out, because what we had it as a very rough guide. We had around 40 sponsors, 40 artists, 40 puffin pals, plus the various partner organisations, the logistics contractors, the varnish people, the guys who made the railway sleeper plinths, things like that, who all kind of dropped in and out, plus our funding partners, our key funding partners, who were the Yorkshire Coast Bid and the East Riding Council. We were kind of liaising with them, and everybody needed to know different things.
Right, so you had 100 people working underneath your umbrella as a project delivery.
Yeah.
Then you also had 100 other people who were associated with the other stakeholders associated with the project.
That's right, yeah.
Right, okay. And so how did you know is there any way you could measure the importance of people? What things were you looking for to tell you that people were essential or key to the success of this project?
I think the nature of the project and its original aims about increasing tourism and footfall in the area, and also the ability, because we had wide geographic spread, so it was really important. We couldn't be, as a core team, we couldn't be everywhere at once.
Right.
So the trail was 125 miles long.
Wow.
So we really needed everybody to understand what was going on, and to be very clear on their roles, and to kind of know what they needed to do when. So yeah, it was absolutely essential. And the sign of the success was, for example, we had our puffin pals who each was tasked with looking after one of the puffins while it was on site and keeping an eye on it. And we had situations whereby I had it reported to me, but that one of the puffins had been laid down by some people who'd had 1 or 2 drinks. And by the time I'd got that we had a WhatsApp group for the Puffin Pals, I contacted one of them. They brought a team of people down, by which time some lovely member of the public had actually stood it up for us anyway. So it was, but that was within the space of an hour or two. And that was a location that's kind of 70 miles from where I was in the office, that we had somebody down there. We knew about it at 6 o'clock in the morning. By 8 o'clock, there was a team of people down there.
And that was what's extraordinary about this project, wasn't there? So you had a lot of support from ordinary people in the community who just fell in love with the project, and you were getting the love and the support from them. That's right, you had people looking after the puffins. I do remember that now. And I think thinking about what you're saying, it echoes what a lot of our clients say to us, is that there comes a point where you realise that the project can only be successful beyond with other people, because it has to go beyond yourself. You can't do it all. It can't be possible to do it all. And I think that's right. Exactly. I can see where with that. So if we go back a little bit and think about what the original intention was of, before you even started going for the funding for the project, because it was like that's this little seed state. What was the original intention in the beginning?
Well, the original intention in the beginning was we'd done this kind of project before. We'd have been approached by the East Riding Council because they were keen. The puffins are something that is really kind of not exactly unique to East Yorkshire rather, but it's one of the most important seabird colonies in Europe. In fact, the Brown Bempton Cliffs and the East Yorkshire. So it originally started. It was about encouraging visitors, and what happened was the discussions started before COVID. COVID happened, and then it became even more important about bringing people back to the area, but also about increasing people's mental health, well-being, having something joyful out there that wasn't asking people to come together in a big group indoors or anything. It was something that people could do individually. It was outside, getting people out in the fresh air, all of those things. So that, and obviously raising funds for the charities that we identified came into that as well. So that was the seed. So it started off as a kind of interesting seed and became something that we saw could offer so much to the communities that it was going to be held in. So
okay, so that was the intention to start with, and it sounds like you actually met a lot of those intentions in your successes, which is pretty amazing. So how did you ensure that everybody was aligned with the same purpose? Because you had a lot of people from different backgrounds, different functions, and as you said, right at the beginning, they would hide on a temporary part-time basis.
Yeah.
So they all had other things they were going to be doing, and this was just one of them. So how did you do that?
We tailored our communications with everybody. We made sure that the communication that we sent out to different groups and different people with different roles had the same message at their heart, but was kind of expressed in ways that were really relevant to them. We also looked at how we communicated with them. So, for example, the sponsors, our original discussions were with people like CEOs, managing directors, who would then kind of say, yes, we're going to get involved, but then they would give us a marketing representative, and that's where one of our specialist team members came in. So their responsibility was keeping in touch, and we looked at what social media platforms people used, what communication methods people used. I mean, COVID just opened that up so much. That for us was a huge change from when we'd done these projects previously, is the kind of prevalence, the move towards social media and kind of electronic communication becoming almost surpassing some face-to-face in some cases, and it was about deciding where to use those things, because you can't lose face-to-face, but at the same time, for a lot of people, they find it much more effective and efficient, and we had to get those messages right, and they just had to be tailored to different people.
So basically the key to getting the message across and making sure that the purpose was aligned was communication, really.
Yeah, it was, and it was also for some of the more integral things in the team. So, for example, the logistics for the artists and kind of all of that kind of thing. It was communication. But it was also it's finding a communication method that they could all kind of buy into, which is a challenge. It wasn't quite so challenging with the businesses, but with the artists, it definitely was, because there's a huge range of kind of tech savviness amongst them. So some of them can do anything you like with Photoshop, but try and get them to use an email and it's kind of, and other people work very much with pen and paper. They don't have social media accounts. So some of it was even upskilling some of those people to the point that they could engage at quite a basic level. But
so what platform did you go with in the end?
We used largely for the artists and the Puffin Pals, we used WhatsApp, because that was a kind of very accessible for a lot of people. They were using it to communicate with their families and things like that. Yeah. And in fact, even to be honest, with the businesses as well, through was the ones that we used for direct communication. We used specific email for people where we were kind of wanting to speak only to one person. But WhatsApp was just very accessible for people. It was something familiar, and kind of did what we needed it to do, really. When we got onto more specifics, when we were needing to share with designers and things like that, we were using shared files and things like that, and for that we used Dropbox. But for the communications, it was WhatsApp, email, phone calls mostly, and then obviously social media for our wider audience.
The multiple channels. It wasn't just one thing that you did. And that echoes actually what most successful managers of teams do, in fact, because you do need often multiple channels and to use them for slightly different things for slightly different stakeholders. So that rings true for us. Yeah, that's cool. Very good. So given that everyone working with you was temporary and also part-time, how did you handle conflicts of availability and resourcing?
Well, we did. I mean, there was a lot of pre-planning that happened in the early stages, and also using our experience from previous projects. So we'd had some pretty steep learning curves the first couple of times we'd done this. So we tried to build in flexibility. We were really clear to find out what people were doing. So, for example, if we had somebody that we wanted to use for a particular purpose, we had conversations with them. We talked around what their other commitments were and where their flexibility was. And where for some people, there may be times when they said, look, I'm not going to be able to do anything during that period, but either side of that, I'm incredibly flexible. So we tried to work within those, and we also tried to, when we knew we might have a slight problem with any of that, we made sure that we had a backup. So, for example, if we were looking at somebody to be used for repair or maintenance on the puffins while they're out on the trail, we had more than one person who was capable of doing it. And we had a couple of people in different areas who were capable of temporary fixes, things like that. And again, it was about encouraging communication, about having a point of contact. So, for example, during the decoration of the puffins, we had a dedicated member of the team who was the central point of contact for everything. Now, obviously, if things got complicated, they would then come back to the rest of the management team and we would work out how to make it work. But it meant for the wider pool of artists, they only had one person that they had to worry about. So we weren't losing messages in the mix.
Yeah, so it's tightly controlled.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay then. So what do you think the main challenges were that you faced during the project?
Well, we did have one main challenge, which is one that we never ever thought we'd have to write into our risk assessment, which was to do with during the production. Obviously, we commissioned the design of the sculpture. We'd said, given it the go ahead, we'd said we want 40 of these things, and the people we were working with, the factory that they work with to create the sculptures was in Poland, and Russia declared war on the Ukraine. And most of the staff, well, not most of the staff, but a lot of the staff in the factory had family there. So quite rightly, they went back. So the factory itself was left with a staff shortage and had a number of contracts underway. So I think we were expecting the puffins to be delivered to us in March, and we had the guys we were working with over here had gone over and said they were standing in a factory full of puffin parts. So that was probably our biggest challenge, and that required a really fast response communication wise. We had sponsors who were expecting the project to actually the actual sculptures to be out in May. We had artists who put aside time to be in our warehouse or to come and collect their puffin and take it away to their studio to paint. We had a large number of people who were kind of primed for a timeline that ran from March through to May when the thing was supposed to start. We suddenly had to say, actually, we're now looking at a July start. They're not going to arrive until the end of April. Can you can you change? And so we needed to have a lot of flexibility. We needed to be very agile in the way that we worked, and that where the initial buy-in had been really committed by everybody else, that's where that came in, because everybody was incredibly understanding and kind of was able to move things around for us. So yeah, it's challenge.
Yeah, so it was a challenge, and I suppose, I mean, every project has a challenge, doesn't it? And every project has something that's surprising that comes out of the woodwork that you never imagined would happen. How would you say having the kinds of relationships you had with your people and how you'd managed them help you overcome those challenges?
Well, I think, as I say, the key thing, everybody was incredibly positive about when we kind of went and said, look, we're really sorry, but we have to make these changes. And I think there's two things. One is that people knew we would deliver. We were very honest about
transparency,
the transparency in there. We were also, whenever we would kind of go into people saying, look, this has changed, we were in a position to say, what can we do to help you make the changes that you need to adapt to our changes? And so we had, for example, one artist who'd been commissioned to put their design onto a puffin, and they had another commitment, and we worked with them to find an artist that they were confident in to actually put the design on the puffin, so kind of to work on their behalf. So we were, there was always a positive. It wasn't, oh, we can't do this. It was, this isn't possible like this, but we're thinking we'll do it like this. And often what happened, people then came back and said, well, actually that works for me, or that doesn't work for me, but how about we do this? So this idea of never going in without an alternative.
Right. Yeah.
And that kind of bred some imaginative thinking around how to solve stuff.
So some open-mindedness, some creative thinking, some problem solving, and it sounded like there was a good level of trust between everybody.
Definitely. I think one of the things transparency was one of the things, but the other was that we really tried to demonstrate an understanding of the impact that was going to have on the other people who we were working with.
There's some level of empathy.
Yeah, whilst we couldn't change what was happening, what we could do is go in with an understanding of the difficulties that it was going to give them, which just made them feel kind of valued, and therefore kind of more, I wouldn't say more positive, but more open to help making those changes.
So if I summarise that, you basically, before you went, so you knew there was going to be a problem before having a meeting, you were as an artist or a sponsor, and you basically thought through their eyes, how they might see it and how they might feel about the problem that would give them, and then come up with some solutions for them, even though it may not be perfect. We'll come up with some ideas that might. And then because you'd already been transparent and the relationships were pretty good before the problem happened, you were in a position then to collaborate and to solve a problem together, rather than have any friction. Is that a fair summary of what
I think? I think that's a fair summary. I mean, obviously, best will in the world, we did have one or two issues which were with people not taking in the communications, even though we tried extremely hard. We did have a couple of issues with those, and that was slightly sticky, but they were on individual levels. There was nothing kind of that would impact the whole project. But we, particularly with businesses, we have to be very mindful that if we do another project, we will be approaching people again as sponsors. So there's a kind of delicacy. There's a delicacy, but a firmness that has to happen.
Of course, and I suppose, not everybody is a good communicator. You're working with people with different disciplines, cross functions, and therefore you wouldn't expect everybody in your 200 group of people to be excellent communicators.
No.
Would it be fair to say that the individuals that didn't take in the communication, maybe communication wasn't their strength?
I think it was more along the lines of organisations where we had a key point of contact, and if that point of contact moved, we weren't told, then communications got lost within their internal systems.
Right.
And then they were trying to hold us responsible for the fact that they hadn't seen something.
So it was a control thing, maybe.
Yeah.
So you were no longer in control where your contact had been moved. You were no longer in control of the communications, and that goes right back to the beginning of this conversation about how did you manage to make sure that everyone aligned? And you said it's communication of message.
Yeah.
So you've lost control of the messaging at that point. Okay, that's really interesting learning, actually.
I hope you enjoyed part 1, where we heard Clare Huby talk about the importance of having a shared purpose, excellent communication, and stakeholder engagement, and how these were the 3 most important factors in the success of the Puffins Galore project. I've written the key points, and we can summarise that. The project's success hinged on the full buy-in and excellent communication of all participants. The scale and interdisciplinary nature of the people involved meant that effective collaboration among team members was essential. This wasn't a project that could have been completed by one person or even a small group of people with the same skills and knowledge. The project's goals also resonated deeply with all those involved across all stakeholder groups. 2 out of the 4 managers had a prior working relationship, fostering a strong foundation of trust. This helped with making the senior management team more productive more quickly than had they been a group made up of 4 strangers. Tailored communication encompassing style and method ensured alignment among team members. Claire also talked about different managers being able to talk to different stakeholder groups. So there was some sort of recognition that each of the managers had their own strengths when it came to communication skills. The quality of relationships with different stakeholder groups and goodwill built up between the groups meant that overcoming challenges such as supply chain disruptions was actually relatively painless. And finally, empathy played a crucial role in managing the Polish manufacturer situation. Anticipating the needs and offering solutions to the different stakeholder groups meant that solutions were found relatively easily. I look forward to you joining me in part 2, where we delve more deeply into communication and decision making used in the Puffins Galore project and made it a success.